Good morning, everybody. We're going to take a quick look at the worksheet from yesterday. So if you had that and you get it out, we're going to go over the answers to make sure you feel confident of what you should and should not have. Okay, so in the first 6, all we had to do was identify what kind of angles they are. That's it. We didn't have to find any measures or anything like that. So we really just have to look at every picture and just go, what's going on in that situation? Right here in this first one, on number 1, notice that angle 1 and angle 2 are on the same side of the transversal. Okay, if they're on the same side of the transversal, then they're either same side interior angles or they're corresponding. Now they're on the same side, but they're also on the top of each line. You know, they're up above each one of the parallel lines. And so that makes them corresponding angles. So hopefully you got that one right. On number 2, you can see that they're on opposite sides of the transversal or alternating sides of the transversal, but still on the interior or inside of those not parallel lines, but the other 2 lines. And so because they're on the inside of those 2 lines, they're on alternating sides of the transversal, these must be alternate interior angles. I'm going to abbreviate that to make it a little bit easier. Number three, now we see angle 1 and angle 2. Angle 1 and angle 2 are both on the same side of the transversal, but they're both also on the inside of the 2 lines that look like in this picture that are parallel. And so they're same side interior. So same side interior angles. On number 4, again, they're on alternating sides of that transversal. Angle 1 is on one side, angle 2 is on the other side, but they're on the interior of these 2 looking like parallel lines. And so these are alternate interior angles. Number 5, again, they're on the same side of the transversal, but they're both on the interior of those 2 lines. And whether the lines are parallel or not, these angles still classify. And so these are same side interior angles. And lastly, number 6, you can see that they are, this is a great corresponding situation. Out of these 4 angles right here at this intersection, angle 1 is on the bottom right. And out of these 4 angles out of this intersection, angle 2 is on the bottom right. And so they correspond to each other. So these are corresponding angles. Hopefully that's what you had. Okay, the next 3 problems are almost identical, except this time you're not just asked, you have to go find them. And it says, name all the pairs of corresponding angles. And so hopefully you're able to look at this and go, hey, out of these 4 angles, I just have to kind of one at a time pay attention to how they correspond to these 4 angles. So like for instance, angle 1 is on the top left. Angle 5 is on the top left. So therefore, angle 1 and angle 5 are corresponding angles. Angle 2 is on the top right. Angle 6 is on the top right. So angle 2 and angle 6 are corresponding angles. Angle 3 is on the bottom right. Angle 8 is on the bottom right. So angle 3 corresponds to angle 8. And then angle 4 is on the bottom left, and angle 7 is on the bottom left. So therefore, angle 4 corresponds to angle 7. So those are all the pairs of corresponding angles. All right. The next one, it says, name all the pairs of alternate interior angles. So I'm going to kind of get rid of what we had going on here so we can see it. And the alternate interior angles always have to be on the inside of these 2 lines, and they're on alternating sides of this transversal. So there's only 2 pairs. You got 4 and 6. Angle 4 and angle 6 are alternate interior angles, and 5 and 3. Angle 5 and angle 3, or 3 and 5, however you wrote it. Okay, and then lastly, get rid of this again. It says, name the pairs of same side interior angles. Well, again, if we're doing the interior angles, they got to be on the inside of these 2, same side of the transversal. So that would just be angle 4 and angle 5, and then also angle 3 and angle 6. Okay, and so now we've gotten all those. Now those were all the real simple problems. Hey, name this, name that. Now we get into problems that you have to actually do something. And we said the most important part of this one was to justify your answer. Okay, so on these, I can see that this angle and this angle are alternate interior angles. Now it shows that they're parallel lines. So I know that alternate interior angles with parallel lines are congruent. And then also this angle and this angle are vertical angles, okay? Now the other thing I do notice though is that 1 and 2 are corresponding angles of parallel lines, so they'd be congruent. So I'm gonna say the measure of angle 1 is equal to 100. And the reason is why is because if lines are parallel, then what kind of angles are those? Those are alternate interior angles are congruent. And I know that the measure of angle 2 is equal to 100. And the real easy answer would be because vertical angles are congruent. And that's enough. Okay, so we've given a reason for each one. So hopefully that made sense to you. Okay, let's look at this next one. Number 11. Number 11, again, I've got alternate interior angles here and here. So I could say, well, the measure of angle 1 has got to be 75. And the reason is because if alternate interior angles, no, sorry, I'm writing this wrong. Get all jumbled up in my head. If lines are parallel, then alternate interior angles are congruent. And lastly, I look and see that 75 and angle 2 are corresponding angles, again, of parallel lines. And so I can say, well, the measure of angle 2 must be 75 degrees because if lines are parallel, then corresponding angles must be congruent. Okay, lastly, number 12. Okay, let's look at this. 135 and angle 1 are corresponding angles of parallel lines. And so I know that the measure of angle 1 has got to equal 135. And what's the reason? Because if lines are parallel, then corresponding angles are congruent. And then 135 and angle 2 are what kind of angles? Those are alternate exterior angles. And so we go, the measure of angle 2 is equal to 135. Why? Because if the lines are parallel, which they are in this situation, then the alternate exterior angles are congruent. Okay, so we've got that. All right, home stretch. Now we've got these shapes, and we talked about these real quickly because we said, hey, some people were having a hard time seeing what you're supposed to see. But we say, hey, wait, these are two parallel lines that have been cut by a transversal. So if we were to identify these angles right here and here, we'd say, well, those are same side interior angles of parallel lines. And we said all the S's went together, same side or sup, same side interior angles are supplementary. So therefore, we know that X plus, let me change this up a little bit. We know that X, which is one of the angles, plus X minus 26, the other angle, must add up to be 180. Why? Because same side interior angles of parallel lines are supplementary. So we say 2X minus 26 is 180. Therefore, 2X is equal to, you add the 26 to both sides, you get 206, divide, you get X is equal to 103. And so what that means is this is a 103 degree angle right there. It says find the measure of each angle. And then this one is going to be 103 minus 26, which is 77. And doesn't it make sense? Those two are supplementary. Same thing again is right here. We've got a line parallel to another line cut by a transversal. So those are same side interior angles once again. And so what we have to do is we've got to figure it out. We go, okay, so that means that X over 2 plus 7X has got to equal 180. There's a couple different ways you can do this. You could multiply everything by 2 to get rid of the fractions. If you multiply everything by 2, you'd have X plus 14X equals 360. Which gives you 15x is equal to 360, and therefore x is equal to 24. All right, and then you'd take that and you'd plug that back in. And while I don't think that that's actually accurate to the picture, that's what we get. So 24 means that one of the angles, 7 times x, is going to be 7 times 24 is 168. And then x over 2 is going to be 24 over 2, which is 12 degrees. And again, look, those are supplementary. So that makes sense. And lastly, we've got a different situation. So hopefully you realize as you look at these parallel lines, and they've been cut by a transversal, we go, oh, we're talking about the angle here and the angle here. Those are corresponding angles. And corresponding angles are congruent if the lines are parallel, which means we would set these two things equal to each other. We would say 3x minus 5 is equal to x plus 55. Okay, and then we push all the x's to one side, so subtract x from both sides, we get 2x minus 5 equals 55. Add 5 to both sides, we get 2x is equal to 60, so therefore x is equal to 30. And then you can take that value and plug that back in. 3 times 30 is 90, minus 5 is 85, and 30 plus 55 is 85. And doesn't that make sense? Those two angles are congruent, because if lines are parallel, corresponding angles are congruent. All right, last problem. This says developing a proof. This is supposed to kind of show us the idea of what's going on here. You're just supposed to practice giving reasons, okay? And so it says, hey, how do we know that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2? And you say, well, it tells us in the given that the lines are parallel, and that's given, right? Right there. And so what we do is we say, well, for the reason would then be, how do we know that 1 and 2 are congruent? Well, those are alternate interior angles. And so the reason for A would be, if lines are parallel, then the alternate interior angles are congruent. Part B says, well, what about 2 and 3? How do you know that 2 and 3 are congruent? Well, those are vertical angles, and we know that vertical angles are congruent. And then it says, okay, well, how do you know that 1 and 3? And notice what they did here. They said 1 is congruent to 2, and 2 is congruent to 3. So even if you didn't know anything about corresponding angles, the goal, now, I'm sure a lot of people say, well, because they're corresponding angles. But look at what they did, and it's important to see what they did up here in the proof, is you see that they said 1 is congruent to 2, 2 is congruent to 3, so therefore by the transitive property, 1 would be congruent to 3. And so it would be the transitive property of congruence. Now, very few people probably got that. Everybody probably went, well, if lines are parallel, then, corresponding angles are congruent. And that's true too. I'm just trying to help you see that they kind of set that up in a certain way so that they could use the property. All right, I hope this helped and made sense. Talk to you later.